Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey, here to preview OU TCU Saturday at 2:30 in Fort Worth. We have a special guest today, Carlos Mendez of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Carlos, how you doing today?
Doing great, guys. How are y'all?
Doing great. Just ready for this game on Saturday. I know you've been writing a lot this week. Just starting off, TCU, I think people see the impressive results so far, but wonder about the competition they're playing. How do the Horned Frogs feel about where things stand right now for them heading into Big 12 play?
Well, the one thing Patterson keeps talking about is how he's gotten a chance to see different styles of offenses and get his defenses ready for that. Stanford is a run below the competition, but at least they gave him some, counter sets and some motion and some misdirection to look at. Minnesota brought a power running game. You got a 230-pound back that was trying to go right at him. And then SMU gave him the spread offense, with the four wides and the four verticals. And so he got a chance to work on that. And he had extra time to prepare for each opponent. So he feels good about them having been exposed to different kinds of offenses, which is really good in the case of the opponent this week, Oklahoma, which can run the ball so well, so powerfully, but also throw it so efficiently. So I think he's happy about where his defense is as far as preparation goes. The offense, that's really a work in progress, and it really could take Devante Field 2 years to master it. He's just getting started. He's 3 games into his career as a quarterback and in a new system. So a lot of questions on offense still, but I think they're confident in their defense right now.
And you mentioned the offense and Boykin especially. How much different does it look from last year, especially with the addition of Sonny Cumbie to that staff? And obviously he's brought more of some of the things that they did at Tech, some of the things that Oklahoma State and West Virginia do as well.
Yeah, it looks very different, and it starts with the quarterback. Devante Field also looks physically different. He slimmed down. He lost 20 pounds. He looks touch quicker, and the offense is just, you get up off the tackle, you get right back to the line. They try to do it as quickly as they can, get snaps in 15, 16, 17 seconds between each other, which is very, very different looking from what you're used to seeing from a Gary Patterson team. So the offense takes an adjustment for a lot of these guys because a lot of these guys weren't recruited to play this style. Devante Field played this style in high school, but he came in as a running back. Then he became a wide receiver, and now he's finally a quarterback. So a lot of these guys are learning literally on the job.
Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit, but Gary Patterson sort of coming from the Bill Snyder mold of power run game and strong defense. How much of an adjustment has this been for him this year, do you think?
Quite a bit. He's told us he's learning something about it every week. He spent the spring trying to figure out how the substitution patterns. When to get guys in, when to get them out, and he had to learn what it meant for his defense. How long is his defense actually sitting, off their feet on the sideline? A quick 3 and out is really a quick 3 and out in this offense. So he's never coached this kind of offense. He's never coached a defense that plays with this kind of offense. He's told us, hey, I turned it over to those guys, Sonny Cumbie and Doug Meacham. They practice it the way they need to. They coach it the way they need to. They run it the way they need to. I'll take care of the defense, but, I've got to learn a lot about, the tempo of the rhythms in a game, how this offense affects things.
Was there one game or one particular thing, do you think, that sort of really created the necessity in Gary's mind to make this change, or has he talked anything about that, or is it just sort of the way college football has gone, feeling the need to catch up?
It's both. The Oklahoma games the past 2 years have really told him that, hey, I need points. I got to score points on these people. And, last year's offense was, frankly, one of the most disappointing he's had in his 17 years out here. It just couldn't move the ball. I think they go into the second half last year against OU without a first down.
I think that's right, yeah.
And that was that may have been the last straw for him, but he did talk about how this is the way kids expect to play these days. 10 years ago that wasn't the case. There's plenty of running backs, plenty of linemen that still grew up in that traditional set. But today, the state is sending out so many quarterbacks to the rest of the country. It's sending out so many receivers to the rest of the country to play in these styles that, we've got to keep some of these guys at home, and I've got to join those ranks. That's what he kept telling us. So part of this is to evolve. He says good coaches, good programs, they do evolve. And kids want to play this style, and I've got to keep some of these kids. So, we made the switch. He told us, he said, we need points. This kind of goes hand in hand with better offense and better recruiting.
In the last couple of years, you mentioned that the OU games have been sort of one of the impetuses behind making this change, but they have been able to play OU extremely close both times. Do they wonder how that offense is going to match up and how their defense is going to take being on the field for that many plays against a team like Oklahoma that can match their tempo when they need to, at least, and also have the athletes to handle the pace?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think everybody is interested in seeing what that turns out to be like, because you are getting into track meets with all these people, with all these athletes in the Big 12. There's so many teams that have Big 12 athletes in the conference, which is a far cry from the Mountain West and some of these other leagues and teams they're used to playing. They're still only in year 3 of this new world for them, and you're throwing in a new offense into the mix. Patterson's been honest. He said, I don't know how it's going to work out. He said, I don't know what to expect. You really need to go through a full year to see. But, this Oklahoma game, at least it brings a, moderate sort of comfort level, because they know this team. They know what their defense can do against that offense. They just need to see what this offense can do against a Bob Stoops defense.
Shifting gears to the defense, I know this is your first year on the beat, right? On the TCU beat?
That's correct.
So one of the first things you sort of had to deal with was the whole Devante Field saga. I just wonder if you could go talk about that and sort of what that was like covering that and how that sort of affected the preseason for TCU.
Well, I think it was a real come down for them. He got voted the preseason defensive player of the year.
Yeah. And
Patterson opted not to bring him to media day, excuse me, which was should have been a sign for everybody that, this guy's not here. And Patterson even downplayed the award a little bit.
Yeah.
But it turned out that very weekend before the media day is when he got into trouble. So I'm not sure what they were counting on him for this year. I'm not even sure how much, Patterson was in his corner, frankly, because they'd had trouble with him the year before. Mm-hmm. But to actually not have him, I think, was a real surprise. I think they thought they could have worked with him and, brought him around to the TCU way a little bit. But, not having him it's just a handicap right now in the league for that defense. But, they do express confidence in the defensive line. They thought they'd really have maybe an elite defensive line with him in it, but I think they're still okay. I think they still think they're okay on the defensive line.
You said that just happened the weekend before. Were they planning on bringing him to Big 12 Media Day? So, and if so, was that sort of the surprise that sort of made you start thinking there might be something going on?
Yeah, I don't think they were planning on bringing him, but I think what did raise, red flags for everybody, for all the media there, was when, Patterson was asked about him, and Patterson said, well, in so many words, I'm surprised he actually got voted this because he didn't play last year. We haven't seen him play in a year, and you guys haven't either. So, we probably should have known at that point that, Gary knew at that time that, oh, man, we got trouble with this guy, and, go take care of this media thing, and we'll see how this works out.
You mentioned how their defensive line has come together without him. There's a guy on that defensive front that a lot of people up here are familiar with, a guy from Oklahoma City, Davion Pearson. How has he come along this year?
He's been very good, frankly. I haven't been around Patterson for years and years, so I'm still trying to get to learn his body language and his speech patterns. But, boy, when he talks about Davion Pearson and Chucky Hunter, his two defensive tackles, he just lights up. He glows. He doesn't criticize those guys. He was extremely satisfied with the way they played against Minnesota and David Cobb. And he continues to point out how Minnesota has run over people since playing TCU. They knocked out San Jose State and Michigan pretty good on the run. So I think Patterson is really, really happy with Pearson the way he's playing, Chucky Hunter the way he's playing, but he's also trying to rotate those two guys. He's trying to use 10 guys on the defensive line. He's trying to use 6 tackles and 4 defensive ends. But if he had his way, I bet he'd have 4 Davion Pearsons along that defensive line.
And last year, a lot of attention paid to the back end of TCU's defense with Jason Verrett and those guys on the back end. How's their secondary held up to this point in the season?
He's not as happy there, but frankly, it really hasn't been tested. SMU threw on them at least, but SMU had a 4th-string quarterback going, and he just wasn't very good, to be honest with you. And Minnesota had a couple of running quarterbacks going, but they weren't very good throwers either. They weren't elite throwers. They were okay. And Sanford had a good thrower, good runner, but the secondary hasn't been tested. They are ready to see how they can cover. In fact, they've had better practices, better competition against their own guys, better work against their own guys than they have in the games, if you ask me.
And finally, Carlos, a lot of talk about this game being a potential upset, TCU having a chance to win. Our columnist, Barry Trammell, predicted that to happen today. What do you think about how this game is going to play out Saturday afternoon?
I think both defenses are going to be very strong. I think this will be a game, deep into the third quarter, probably the fourth quarter. But what's going to make the difference, aside from the usual stuff we look at, which is turnovers, kicking games, that kind of thing, I think what's going to make the difference is the way the two quarterbacks play. They're both very talented. They both can make big plays, but we've seen inconsistency from both guys. They can both roll out a clunker series on you. So who's going to make the mistake, or who's going to get pressured into a mistake? Right now, I'd have more confidence in Trevor Knight because he's done it a little bit longer, and he's got more explosive players on offense on his side, just more in quantity. So that may make the difference. If you think about the last 2 games, there's been a big play for OU, a 66-yard touchdown run, a 76-yard touchdown run. There was a score right before the half. A couple of years ago, I remember watching these games. But then they turned out to be the exact same kind of game where, a play in the fourth quarter for one of these offenses decides it. And we won't know which one until we get there.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think this game's going to go right down to the wire. I think I picked it 34-27 in our predictions today. But I think it's going to be a mostly defensive game. I think there's going to be a couple breaks that wind up getting the score up a little bit higher than we would have thought. But I think TCU is heading in the right direction. I like what their offense is doing, but I think having this kind of challenge for them at this point in the season after playing the teams that they have, obviously SMU is struggling right now. I think Minnesota's decent, but the Big Ten isn't very good overall. But like I said, I like the direction they're heading. I think, but they've got some work to do, and I think this will be a good measuring stick for them. But I think OU comes out ahead. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I think kind of like you guys. I think it'll be a pretty close game, but I think I picked the score in today's paper to be 35-30, which is more high scoring than it's been the last couple of years between these two teams. But I think with the way TCU's playing offense now, they'll score some points. Boykin looks a lot better, but in the end, I do think OU will be able to maybe make one more big play.
Well, Carlos, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you Saturday in Fort Worth.
Glad to talk to you guys. I always love talking football this time of year.
All right, thank you so much, Carlos. You can check out his work every day at star-telegram.com and check us out every day at newsok.com and every morning in the Oklahoma.